great, Rav Ashlag. Any thoughts, any ideas before we get going? Hold on, I'm just writing this.
Oh, we did have a question. Okay, so if going back to this is a class that we had, I guess, a couple of weeks ago about actually it was about fasting, right? And so if you have a bad dream before the Shabbat, the eve of Shabbat, you fast. That allows you. Well, you fast on. That's the only time you're to fast on the Shabbat. Um, was there more information about fasting again to kind of make up for fasting on Shabbat? Was that
Yeah, it was like
we
yeah,
were kind of clear about that?
yeah, it was something like that. It was like because you took away from the enjoyment of Shabbat during the week, you do a fast day to make up for that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. The question was, do you do it like directly afterwards, or you can do it just whenever
Okay.
day?
So so do you do that fast the day after the Shabbat, or do
It's a
you
good
just
question.
have the day throughout the week?
What I'll do is I'll look into that halakha, and then I'll
Okay.
look at the different variables around that situation, and then I'll send you back a response on it. Yeah, I just don't want to. I don't say anything out of context. I mean, is it the day after? Or do they want you to do back to back, or is it on that Monday? Because most people do fast on Mondays and Thursdays. So, do you make up for on one of those days? So I just want to be able to be clear on it because it's a unique situation. But it's there. I mean, we learned the halakha. I just want to go over it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in right now. So, anyways, all right. So, yeah. So we're back in the Rav Ashlag, and we're dealing with this idea of like reality, creation, these types of things. And it's important because all of the learning of the Torah, all the learning of the sages. The key thing is being able to have an option of consciousness to experience the same reality that we were given by the like say the industrial system. You know what I mean? Like the system of like thought of we are a race, we're ethnicity, we go to this school, we come from this neighborhood, we go to school, we eventually, maybe go to college, we get a degree, we go to get a job, we make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a very productive thing, but we cannot leave out the other aspect too, which is the purpose of the soul itself, and then why we came into this world to begin with. Because conceivably, the method of living can change dramatically, right? But we still would have the same purpose here, in terms of souls, right? So that's why the study is important because a lot of other people, like through my travels, one of the advantages that people have that come from different parts of the world, they're able to look at one system versus another system, right? They come from a particular place and then they could apply themselves to America and are able to kind of sift through different opportunities that people who grow up in America may just like overlook, right? So in that same way, all the systems in the world overlook the purpose of why we are here, right? And so the study that we're in is this idea of saying like, hey, like what's going on? Why are we here? What is this system? These are questions. Now, if a person says, I don't agree with Rav Ashlag, okay, fine, it's okay. I mean, he never claimed to be a prophet. I mean, he had deep insight. He made high connections. He connected to certain levels of divine inspiration. But the point is saying, let's start the conversation, right? And that's the main thing. Is the revolution is starting the conversation. Okay, so let's go into Rav Ashlag. His thing is going into this idea of purpose, right? What is our purpose? What's the purpose? How do we connect to this whole system of thought? Okay, so okay. So he says like this. Okay, he says, if you remember back in the beginning, one of the questions that he asked, he says, these explanations offer an opportunity. So maybe we should go back a little bit. Okay. So when we went back, if we go back, reincarnation, we come back, the soul comes down with a desire to share, because it's connected to Hashem. But once it enters the body, it takes on this desire to receive because the body itself is rooted in the desire to receive. That's what the whole physical body is. The body we have is all about receive, 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 receive. And the soul is all about sharing, sharing, sharing. But while the soul is inside the body, it's in the limited expression, right? So the purpose, the idea of life is to go through a process where we're able to go through a series of experiences following the ways of the Torah through mitzvot in Torah study, that we could deal with all these issues that we experience in life, and we could deal with it in a kosher way, right? And as we do that, we correct the soul, right? So we go through this process where we correct the soul. Thank God, Baruch Hashem, we correct the soul. Then we when we reach that apex of that correction, that's when the soul and the body depart. And this is what we call burial, right? And so a person is buried, and the body decaying over a period of time allows that soul to fully ascend to its highest level. And it goes to this highest level, and then it comes down at a later date called Michaye Hamatim, right? The resurrection of the dead. And so what we just learned about was this idea of answering different questions that were posed. One of which is that when a person is reincarnated, why do they have to have their old body, right? That is deficient, right? So, like, say if a person, well, God forbid, they went in a war, you see a lot of soldiers now, people in war, and say a person lost a leg, God forbid. Okay, a person lost a leg. So when they're reincarnated, they're going to be reincarnated with that lost leg. But the difference is that old body, or that old expression of the body, right? Because the other body dissolved in the ground. But God gives us this body that seems to be deficient. But what he does is he puts the perfected soul into that deficient body. And because of the soul's desire the soul's desire to share, the body goes back and heals to its original state. And not only that, once it achieves that perfection, then Hashem gives us an entirely new body, right? And this entirely new body is the body that is completely transformed to the desire to share as well. And through this connection of the desire, the soul's desire to share, in the body's desire to share, this connects us to God, and this is this future reality. So now we're going on Uvechal Nif Techa Lanu. So he says like this. So now we're dealing with this idea of purpose, right? So Shem asked in the beginning, yes, Shem asked. So we ask in the beginning about Hashem. We say, why does it that God makes the world in such a way that there's all these planets, all these stars, all these people, all these animals, all these trees, all these blades of grass, all these insects, all these mosquitoes, gnats, everything all over the world, and everything is linked together, right? So what is he doing? So this is how Rav Ashlag asks this question. He says these explanations offer an opportunity to answer inquiry number 2. What is the task in the great chain of beings of which we are all only a small piece during our short lives? So he says like this, and he says, and know that our service during the 70 years of our lives will be divided into 4 stages. The first stage, to acquire the to acquire the exaggerated and limitless desire to receive. This is when we're first born, right? With all of this defectiveness and impure system of the 4 worlds. So there was 4 worlds of purity and 4 worlds of impurity. So in our early years, we're connecting to the desire to receive, and we're connecting to that world of impurity. For if we did not possess the defective desire to receive, we would not repair it at all, since a person cannot repair what does not contain in him. So the whole purpose is to go through this process of tikkunim. So this whole process of starting in impurity is a process. Lo di oto she or haratzon lekabel. So he says, therefore, it's not enough to obtain the desire to receive, as it is inherent in the body of a newborn. We must spend no less than 13 years to become a chariot to carry the klipas of impurity, such as the impurity shall rule over us and provide their light for us, since the light encourages the growth in the desire to receive. The klipa expands the desire to receive, which grows. For example, a newborn only wants a small amount, but when the other side grants him that small amount, the desire to receive expands, and he wants a large amount. So kids, like, they want more and more milk from their mother. They grow, they grow, they grow, and so the desire to receive. So they're showing this process of the child and how the child's desire to receive grows with time because he's connecting to that impure side. So that impure side, which we say, oh my God, the impure side. But in the beginning of a person's life, that impure side is increasing his desire to receive. That desire to receive becomes so much over the course of 13 years. Now he has a whole world to fix, right? And so that's when he starts the process of fixing. But the process of fixing starts during this time. For example, a newborn only wants a small amount, but when the other side grants him a small amount, the desire to receive expands and he wants a large amount. When the other side grants him a large amount, the desire to receive expands further and wants even more. If a person does not overcome this through Torah mitzvot, which helps him purify the desire to receive and transform it into desire to give, the desire to receive will continue to expand over a person's entire life to the point that a person dies with only half of what he desires. So he's saying, like, this idea is like this it's like when you see like these like kind of like cartoons where a person like is getting covered by something, like whether it's dirt or leaves or some type of goo or something. They're getting, but it's over a process. It just grows by the feet, and slowly this person becomes completely covered in this substance, right? So he's saying this is the idea of the negative side, but the negative side is really there to increase our desire to receive, right? Because the negative side is what? The desire to receive for oneself, right? We want to evolve to the place of the desire to share. But the process of evolving to the desire to share forces us to change ourselves and change our habits and change the way we see things. And by going through that process of the desire to share, right, and the desire to share, and that transformation is the correction that our soul came in the world for. So it says, "Veze ni nikon shehu mitzvi bereshut." So he says the other side and the klipa have the task of expanding a person's desire to receive, turning it into something exaggerated and boundless. And for this, a person of all the material needs of the world need to, and this creates a person all of the materials he needs in the world to repair. So it's this desire to receive that expresses itself in our childhood. Growing up is the very thing. So a lot of times you hear people say, "Oh, a lot of trauma happened to us in our childhood," right? And a lot of that trauma that we experience in our childhood is very things that we have to deal with in our everyday life, right? So the point is saying, like, okay, so that being the case, we get it. That's part of the klipa, right? That's part of the negativity that created this desire to see. Why, God? Why did I have to deal with this? Why did I have to experience this? Why did that have to happen to my cousin? Why did that happen to my grandmother? Why does that, what I'm saying? These things are what create this aspect of the soul reaching out back to God. So we'll continue on. It says, cheluch bedehi. So he said, and the second stage involves, so it's 4 stages, right? So the second stage evolves after 13. So we understand these different levels of soul. The first level is a stage where the kid is a young kid, and they're all about the desire to receive me, 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 me. And now we're here about the stage after me, 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 which is at the time there is a point in the heart. And that point is the secret of the back, the scared the scared soul. The point that point is enclosed in the new in is that or sorry that point is enclosed in the inborn desire to receive. but it only awakes after the age of 13. So there's another aspect inside the desire to receive. So while this 13-year-old, this kid is growing to the age of 13, he's selfish, crying, this all about me. I don't care if you need to sleep, mom and dad. I don't care. I'm angry. So right, I need to eat, right? So that aspect, right? And so the what do you call it, the terrible twos, all this type of stuff. So anyway, so the point is that so this aspect, he says, within that desire to receive is enclosed and born to that the desire to receive. There's an aspect within it that only awakes after 13. What is this aspect? At that time, the point begins to enter into the territory of the system of the world of scarcity, at least to the extent that a person is involved in Torah and mitzvot. So there's this inner aspect that exists inside. There's an inner quality that exists inside the selfishness that can only be revealed after 13, and the amount of it that's revealed has to do with how much Torah the kid is involved in. It says during this time, the primary task is to acquire the expanded spiritual desire to receive. From the moment of birth, the desire to receive is only maternally. He says, thus, even though he acquires the exaggerated desire to receive prior to 13 years old, the desire to receive is not yet completely, it has not yet completely grown complete, since the primary desire to receive involves spirituality. For example, prior to 13, a person's desire to grasp, i.e., shallow, all the revealed wealth and honor presented in the material world and temporary world that is like the passing cloud. This is not true for the exaggerated spiritual desire to receive, which motivates it is to grab and enjoy all the goodness and that. So, like say, like for example, maybe you say like kids under the age of 13 didn't really necessarily appreciate the dynamic of material wealth or influence in the world and these types of things. I mean, they want things that they want, maybe influence over their parents, maybe the cookies that they want to eat, but in general, the bigger scope of life, they can't connect to that. But it's only this aspect, there's just an inner aspect of the desire to receive that wants a much higher level, not just the me consciousness, but the surrounding light, the expanded world around me, right? And that awareness comes through the study of the Torah. And he says, in the wealth of the eternal world to come, which is the permanent and unending question. Thus, the exaggerated desire to receive is not complete until it develops the desire to receive spiritually. Lo veze she'amru beiti kunim. So he says, this reality. He says this reality. He says this reality. The second stage explains it in the Tikkunim Zohar, right? In the Tikkunim Zohar, it says the verse says the leech has two daughters, give and give. The word leech referred to Gehinnom, which is the place you don't want to go after you die. Gehinnom's like it's kind of like a hell type of dynamic, but it's like more of a process than like a permanent place. It says the evil doers are trapped there. The evil doers who are trapped there bark like a dog, saying, "Have, give, give us the wealth of the world, give us the world to come." V'kam kol ze midbagia chashuva lein arech. So he says, and he says, still the second stage is a great deal more advanced than the first one. Not only does a person inquire to understand the true greatness of the desire to receive, not only is all of the material available to him in order to perform the service of God that he requires, but this is also the stage at which he can acquire the quality of doing divine service for his own sake. As the Talmud explains in Pesakim 15b, a person should always engage in Torah mitzvot, even if he does so not for the sake, as though to perform the mitzvah, not for its own sake. One comes to perform them for his own sake. He says, even if a person comes and he maybe not have like the right intention, just does it because hey, it says does it, he'll come to eventually understand that this is his own personal salvation. He said, this is why the sages, after 13 years of age, qualify as holy. This is the whole concept of the bar mitzvah. This is the secret of the scarce maidservant who serves her master, which the secret of the scarce shkina presents also a term for the lowest sphere. A maidservant brings the person to the level for its own sake, and therefore makes a person worthy of revelation of the Shekhinah. So he says, but a person must do everything possible to reach for its own sake, doing it for the sake of holiness, right? And he says, and he should not make the effort. He says, if he does not make the effort, if he does not reach the level of for its own sake, it's l'shem shemaim, for the sake of heaven. He can fall into the trap of the impure maidservant who stands in opposition of the holy maidservant. The task of the impure is to confuse the person such that it's not for its own sake, and it does not become for its own sake. That is the verse of that's the purpose of this verse in Proverbs that says, "The maidservant who displaces her mistress." For the impure maidservant will not allow a person to come close to the mistress, the holy skina. So what he's saying that, so if a person comes to prayer and they say, hey, I got this going on in my life and I got this going on in my life, that is a level, right? That is a level, and that's okay. You have things that are going on, right? And a person does it because they say, I need, I'm having a lot of troubles in my life. I need to pray, right? That's a level. But he's saying the problem with that is that you're in a place of give, give, give. You're in a place of the desire to receive. He said, but when a person goes to pray and they do it for the sake of the oneness of the Creator, right? Regardless of what's going on in life, what's happening, it's just saying, I'm doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. Not that if I do the mitzvah, it could change judgment in the heavens, and then from there I could get whatever I want. No, I'm doing it for the sake of that. I'm doing it for the sake of that, right? And so he says, he says, Ve hami rugia ha sefit. He says, Sheikh So he says that in the final level within this stage is coming to love God greatly, comparable to the glutton who becomes infatuated with a material pleasure that thoughts of pleasure stands before his eyes all day and all night. This is what the poet stated. When I recall him, I cannot sleep. It says in Shlikot, during the days of in Rosh Hashanah, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, we say Shlikot. That's one of the poems. In the second day of the 10 days of Tshuva, the verse also states, "Fulfill the desire is the tree of life." It says in Proverbs, for the first five level, for the first level, for the five levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chayim, yakida, referred to by the abbreviation of Nara Haya. He says, are the secrets of the tree of life, which has 500 years. Each level is 100 years. During this time, he can receive all aspects of the soul. The five levels will be explained shortly regarding the third stage. So I wanted to stop here at 32. I know it's kind of like intense, but we are coming back on Wednesday. But I just want to stop here because a lot was said, and I want to recap it. And he's going to go into the different levels of the souls and what different souls is corrected. So I read that's like a new start, right? We're up until this point. Okay, so we're up into this point where we're at the stage where we. What did you get from it? That's a better way to do it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking about, we were looking at Daniel, and when you just made that point, Chief Rabbi, that about give, we're looking at Daniel, I think it was chapter 6, and Daniel, the decree went out, but then Daniel, he left from hearing the decree, and he just went to go and pray. He opened the window and went to go and pray. And you would think like, okay, he was praying because of the decree that went out. But then in the text, it said that as he had always done, so it was like that just, being in a position of getting from just give, and to the place of that righteousness. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about in reflecting on that aspect, especially with the story that you gave. That's it.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, it's one of those things you got to kind of recap a little bit. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the main sentiment is this idea of being able to understand this process of the role of creation, right? And seeing like our dynamic in this big pool of creation, right? And but being able to articulate this experience from the dynamic of the soul, right? And being able to see that there's different dimensions to the soul, there's different aspects of creation, there's different processes of evolution, and so when we see the progression of the human being, right? So now we're learning about the human being. Right? You guys had kids, the whole thing, and so you saw that kid go from the place of complete selfishness from a child to 13, and then you saw another aspect kick in after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this other component, right? But we see that dynamic of our childhood, right? That dynamic of our childhood is the basis of the rest of our life, right? So that desire to receive that's being cultivated, right? Because that's the place that we're at in that stage. We're like, oh, okay, so that's that point. So now we realize that after that stage of 13, there's another aspect that's also being created at the same time, right? Which you can say there's an inner, like an inner light that is inside of there. Now, the extent that that inner light is revealed has to do with the amount of holiness that child or that person is exposed to, right? So the way that was explained is this idea of being able to say, okay, well, the it's like it's kind of like how you have like certain like donuts or whatever, right? They have this like outer layer and they have this inner layer, right? And the outer layer is kind of like the donut, and the inner layer is like cherries or whatever type of thing. So as you go into that inner layer of the cherry can only come out if certain things happen externally, right? And so that's right. So that dynamic is there, right? So that's the second phase of this soul. And so now we're understanding these different different dynamics of the soul. And to say is why is this important? Because again, it's a recalibration of life, right? Because we understand that like the learning, the Torah, the mitzvot is there to evolve the soul, is to evolve all these inner qualities and reveal inner aspects that it's like the seed that gets planted in the ground and this miraculous tree, grows out of it, right? With fruits and all types of stuff. All right, so let's go into some halakha, bring it down a few levels, bring it down to hold on, let me get this ready.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Okay. All right, so this is an interesting halakha. I thought about you guys with it, you guys being out in the woods and all this type of stuff. So I thought like they have like, this is an interesting halakha in that way. The key thing is just familiarizing ourselves with the Shulchan Aruch at this point, right? The book of laws, how it works, different perception, things are covered, these types of things, and just familiarizing ourselves, right? And so that's the main thing right now. And then upon the familiarity, it allows it, for a person to dive into it. You know what I mean? To really take charge. But it's after that. Okay. So it says Shulchan Aruch, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, halakha 60. So it says Haro a ilane ma'akal me shemosi ima paracha. She says, upon seeing a fruit tree in bloom, you should say the blessings. Let me see if we can say it. It says, Baruch atah Hashem, Eloheinu Melech, Olam, Shelo, Chiser be'olamod, Palum uveravo, Bariot Tovot Ve'ilanot Tovim Lehanot Bahem Bene Adam. So it says, so with the blessing is saying, so he says, when you see a fruit tree in bloom, so pretty soon, all the people who are living in the woods, these type of things, a lot of the fruit, the trees are going to start blooming, right? But he says specifically here, fruit tree. You should say, blessed are you, Hashem, our God, God of the universe, King of the universe, who's caused nothing to be lacking in this universe. And he creates it. He created it in God, in goodly creatures, in goodly trees, in making in giving mankind pleasure within. He says, you may recite this blessing only once a year. But if you delay saying the bracha until the fruit the fruit grew or fully grew, you should no longer say it. Some authorities hold that if you neglect to say the bracha when you saw it blossoming the first time, you can no longer say it. So this particular blessing is a unique one because it's something on site. So there's two opinions on you. So if you see a fruit tree blossoming, so you say a person has an apple tree, and you're starting to see it sprout slowly, because I think that we talked about the other day, the apple grows before the leaves, right? So if you're starting to see it starting to blossom, a fruit tree, you have to immediately say this bracha. And then they said, like, if you delay it and like say you come back like a couple weeks later, a month later, whatever, and it's already fully grown, it's too late to say it. Some people say that if you see it the first time and you see it blossoming and you don't say it, you can't, you lost opportunity, even if you come back the next day. Al hazikin vehu kol chav hayore ka'etz beyore. She says, when you see, okay, so there's another one. So when you see a meteorite shower, that is just shooting stars flashing across the sky from one place to another in a brilliant streak. Or when you see a comet that has a bright tail streaming behind it, or witnessing an earthquake or a hurricane, you say the bracha on each of these. You say Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam. See, I can't even read the stuff in English. Oh, let me read it up here. So it says, Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam. Well, hold on, let me make sure. Okay, so there's other brachas there too. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm saying the right one. So it says, okay, I'm up here. Okay. No, that's not super sheet. That's not the one. Okay. Hold on. All right. So it says Shea Salo Zena'am Veshavet Shel Yora. Right? So yeah. So he says like this. He says, Ose, Ma'ase, Vershi. Okay, so this is what he's saying. So he's saying, so is this blessing? So he's saying, so when you see any of these things, you say, Baruch atah Hashem, Eloheinu melech haolam, Ose, Ma'ase, Bereshit, right? So that blessing in essence means, blessed are you, Hashem, our King of the universe, who made creation, right? Bereshit. He says the blessing over the meteorite should be said no more than once a day during the night. Even if you saw another meteor or shower, once you say the blessing over the comet, you should not repeat it. When you see it again within 30 days, on hearing the thunder after the lightning and flash, you could say, I'm gonna go back up because I don't like how it's the English stuff is weird. I mean, it's like hard for me. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. All right. So okay, let me find it. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu yeah, she'aver havarak mavarek. Or he's saying like here, or you say Baruch Atah Hashem Melech Haolam She Kochol Ugi Vurato Ma'ale Olam. So he brings two blessings. I'm just saying, I just said both of them. So okay, upon hearing the thundering after lightning, you say, "Blessed are you, Hashem, the strength of our God." I mean, blessed are you, Hashem, the King of the universe, for our strength is His power fills the universe. And you see the lightning, and you hear the lightning at the same time. You may say, you may say it again, Ma'aseh Bereshit, if you hear it together, and if you see the lightning and you say the bracha Oseh, and he says Ma'aseh Bereshit, he says immediately after the lightning, if you hear the thunder, you may not say the bracha over the thunder, or for the bracha over the lightning is exempt. That's the whole thing. I mean, why this? The whole thing. The bracha over the lightning and thunder should say the moment they occurred. You should say the moment occurred, but if there's a brief interruption, the bracha should not be said anymore. Right. So you hear the thunder and lightning, you got to say it immediately. But like if you pick up the phone and someone calls you and you talk to them, close them on Shelo, need pazeru ha'avir, niftar ba avaracha. So he says, as long as the clouds are scattered, one brachas are all exempt. The lightning and the thunder that may occur. So if the clouds are like there, he says, but if the clouds disappear and the sky became clear between the thundering claps and the lightning, you must repeat the bracha. The flashing light is unaccompanied by thunder that is caused by the heat and is not considered real lightning and requires no bracha. Verote keshet mivarek. Baruch atah Hashem Elohim. Okay, Zokir, Barid Amen Bariot Vekayam Ma'aro. So he says, and if you see a rainbow, you have to say the blessing, blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who remembers the covenant, is trustworthy, and his covenant is fulfilled in this world. And it is forbidden to gaze too much at a rainbow, by the way. The whole thing with Noah's flood, the whole thing. So he says, Vehayim, Ve'al Hareim Vegi Vohim Ve'hamafu Samim. So he says, Be'olam. So he says, and you may, he says, if you see a great sea or a tall mountain, which are famous for their great heights or great size, you may say, Ose Ma'aseh Bereshit. Ve'otse Chama Bid Kufata Ve'ia Mishmoneh. And he says, and when you see the sun at the end of the cycle, that is after the period of 20 years, when the vernal equinox of the month of Nisan occurs at the beginning of Tuesday night, you should say on Wednesday night morning, when the sun is shining, you should say the bracha, brukata melech Osei Maaseh Bereshit. You're just going through different scenarios. These are all things you got to review, but this is just like kind of like just talking about the idea of seeing the physical world around us and to see these miraculous things in the Torah and the Halacha. The rabbis wanted us to acknowledge these things, right? In the frame of holiness. So he says, before saying this bracha, you should recite Psalms 148, Hallelujah, praise for the heavens, and then say the bracha, and then pray, Heal Adon, Master, God of Masters, show. Okay, so he's just going through different things. In conclusion, okay, he's just going through different things you're doing when you're doing tefillah. And he says, so he says, it's best to say the bracha early in the morning, immediately after sunrise, because the delight of performing all mitzvahs properly. It is possible to say that in any assembly of people, for it is written, for the multitude of people is the king's glory, and announced that he should be made on the day before to inform the public of the gathering. But if it is impossible to call an assembly for early in the morning, the bracha should not be postponed because of it. Rather, each person should say immediately when he sees the sun rising. So there's a special bracha when we see the sun rise. He says, rather, a person should say it immediately when he sees the sun rise. The rule that the diligent to do mitzvahs properly takes precedence over the rule. In the multitude, if you have not said the bracha in the morning, you should still say it until the third hour of the day. And in case of emergency, you should say it until noon. Therefore, if the sky is cloudy in the morning and the sun is obscure, you should wait until it is near noon. Perhaps the sun would by then appear. And if you're not able to see the bracha, if you're not able to say the bracha mentioning the king God's name and kingship, but if the sun did not appear by then, you should say the bracha omitting the name and kingship. The most recent, okay, whatever. He's bringing in another point. So we're just going through it. We're going through it. So it says me sha'asa lo hakadosh baruch hu neis shelo ka davarek ta meha teva. So he says, if on your behalf the Holy One, blessed be He, performs a miracle by saving your life. So say you experience a miracle like in your day, like something amazing happens, like God forbid, a near-death experience or something happens. He says in the supernatural way, and you see the place where this miracle took place, you say, okay, let's go back up here. So it says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa li neis bein makom hazeh. And so and you said, the bracha says, blessed are you, Hashem, our God of the universe, who performs a miracle for me at this time. Son, those who are born before the miracle occurred should say a bracha. He says, which is according to this bracha. Son says, he who performs a miracle for my father at his place. So he says a little bit different. He says, so the idea is to say, like, he said, even if you didn't see the miracle, you just heard about it, you should say the bracha. Right? That's what I'm getting from. And he says the grandsons, and he says, and for the grandson, he says for my ancestors. And if there were more than one grandson, they should say for our ancestors. A person who experienced many miracles and has arrived at one of the place where the miracle occurred to him, should mention all of the places and should include all of them one bracha, right? And he says, who performs miracles for me in places such. You want to hear something crazy? So one time, like years ago, I went to Hebron to go to where Abraham's buried at. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they're all buried there. Sarah, Rivka, and Leah are all buried there. Adam and Eve. It's a whole thing, whatever. But I went there, and so I remember when I was leaving, there was two guys there, and they were like, I don't know if they were talking or they asked me to come over there or take a picture of them. It was something they asked me to do, and then I stopped talking to them because they're like yeshiva guys. Well, like anytime you see a yeshiva guy, you're like, hey, so where you learning at? What's up? Where you at? Where you learning? That type of thing. So we started talking, and the reason why they were there, this one guy that was there was at the same place years ago when he was younger, and he actually got hit by a sniper, like a Palestinian sharpshooter I guess something was happening, and he got shot. This young kid, and so he came back there years later with his friend to do this bracha there, and he asked me, and I answered amen. You know what I'm saying? So that's like a real story. So it's a real thing. Like, and we all when I think about even from the African American experience, there has to be so many sparks of holiness at these ports in Africa where the slaves were put into and shipped. Like it's so many sparks of our ancestry and these things there, and the fact that we're here right now, you know what I mean? It's like such a miracle. Like we could have all died out, we could have all been killed. I mean, we take it, no, we didn't, we're strong, we made it. Okay, but it could have been the opposite very easily. So anyway, we're miracles. All right, so it says, Harotse Chamam Gadol Be Torah. So he says, when you see something outstanding, when you see an outstanding Torah scholar in Israel, you should say, Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam sheikh halech machemato le'ira'av. So he says, Hashem, to bless you, Hashem, our King, God of the universe, who appointed of his knowledge to those who fear him, because Israel is God's portion and clings to him, and the term appointed is used when you see an outstanding scholar renowned for secular knowledge. He said, this is interesting. When you see an outstanding scholar renowned for secular knowledge, who is a Gentile, you say this blessing, who has given wisdom to human beings. So Gilad, even for the non-Jews, we have a blessing for them when they don't even have to be great in Torah, but they just, they're a scholar. We're like, wow, we appreciate it. Haro Malek Mikalek. So he says, we see a king. When you see a king, any of any nation of the world, you say Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam shenatan mi kovodo levasher vedam. So he says, blessed are you, Hashem, the King of the universe, who's given the glory to human beings. Even if you do not see the king in person, but you witness a spectacular pageant or pageantry, and you are certain of the king's presence, you may recite the blessing. So, like, you ever see those big thing with the Duchess and whatever, and they got like millions of people outside standing, and the guys are in the back, so they're not saying anything. They didn't have a jumbotron, right? So he's saying, if you're there and you don't see him, just because he's there, you can say a blessing. He says, and you are certain, he says, of any nation, by the way. So any king, so everything has a place of godliness. Everything has a place. So even if you see a non-Jew who's like a mathematician, oh, that's an amazing thing. He's a genius at math. He's a genius at English. He's a genius at, some type of, talent, bless him. Or a king from another nation, a Gentile king. Even that, wow, he's a kingship. What a responsibility. Wow. So he says, and you're certain of the king's presence that you recite this bracha. The blind man should say the bracha, admitting the divine name and kingship. It is a mitzvah to make an effort to behold the glory of kings. But if you have seen him once, you should not stop your Torah studies to see him again, unless he appears later with a greater military parade and more like more majestic type of display. Harotze Kabare Israel. He says, when you see the graves of Jews, you should say this bracha. It says, Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar takim badin vaku. So he says, you are Hashem. He says, blessed are you, Hashem, our King of the universe, who has informed you in judgment. When you see the graves of the pagans, you should say the verse in Jeremiah, your mother will be deeply ashamed that she gave birth to you, will be disgraced. Behold, the ultimate, he says, the ultimate end of nations will be in the desert, in a dry and wilderness. Okay, so we're not so happy when we see the heathen's great sites, but Jews' great sites, we bless. Kol berichot hariya ha nizkarot ima chazer ve'ra'a. So he says, and if you see a phenomenal sight again, you should not recite the bracha. So any of these things that you see, if you see it, with these stars, these moons, the shooting stuff, also, he says, unless 30 days have elapsed since you saw it. So, if it's 30 days next month, like we're going into a new month, by the way, it's Rosh Chodesh is on Wednesday, right? So oh wow, is it like for tonight for me? Yeah, it's starting right now for me, actually. Yeah, Monday on Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so she said, he says, you do not count the day you saw it, and you will exclude the day you see it. Again, there are 30 days you may make this bracha, and if you see different individuals who hold the same public office as those whom you have seen previously, for instance, another king, or you see or other graves or the like, you should repeat the bracha even within 30 days. So whatever. Okay. So this is gonna get funny. You're gonna like this. Haro e koshi vega chor. She said, if you see an African or an Indian that a person of deep red or deep red color or albino, that is a person who is very pale, or a mal deformed individual, or to say that a person who is abnormally tall or slender or a dwarf, or that is a person whose skin is covered with warts or scales, or any, basically saying anyone who looks unique. Like, I remember once I saw this girl here, and I don't know exactly where she was from, but she was very like attractive girl, but she was extremely dark, like extremely dark. Like I've never seen a person so dark before. So he's saying like this: if you see such a person, this is like also an expression of Hashem. Or if you see a person who has very like deep reddish type colors, right? Like very like some of the people in some of the what do they call it, the Amazons and these types of places, right? So if you see any of these types of people, that, or even if you see people with deformities, or people who are very tall or very skinny, any of these things that are miraculous. Sometimes you have, I mean, I'm not trying to put it down, but sometimes you have people like in the circus, right? Like you have a person who's like really tall, or a person really skinny, or a person who all these things are humongous expressions of God, and that's what the point that the sages are saying. So he says, or covered in warts. He says, or a person with tangly hairs, whose entire hair is clean together, or an elephant or an ape. You say, so hold on. He says, Bruka Talo, Malakalama Ma'ane Habariot. Yeah. And he says, and blessed are you, Hashem, who makes the different creatures. But you say the bracha only when you see them the first time, because the strangest is the strangeness is most striking. So like if I'm from China, right, and I see a person, say a black person, you already see these videos with people in China, these places see a black person, they go crazy. Or like, say, I remember hearing the story of the Ethiopians, and the Ethiopians said they didn't know there was a such thing as white Jews or Ashkenaz Jews, right? They didn't know that, right? So when they saw the Ashkenaz Jews, it was a shock to them, right? So it's talking about people who are in different places that don't look like the normal, but not just don't look, but very extreme levels of that. Like there's certain tribes in Africa where it's people like 7 foot tall, right? You see such people, you see a person. I mean, it's a bracha, right? It's a huge thing. So the uniqueness is there, and everything is holy, right? All the things are. If a person grows with what we were saying secular, what has a defect, by the Torah, it's holy. It's a bracha. Ha ro'a ed ha chagir ve'ed ha ta'ah. She says the first time you see any of the following, say the bracha of, okay, so the bracha, he says a crippled person, or or amputee. That is to say, a person whose hands were amputated, or a blind person, or one is afflicted with open sores, or a person who's covered with freckles. That is a person whose skin is speckled with white spots, alternatively with brown spots, if they are birth defects. But if they were afflicted after birth, in to see them cause you distress by saying Brugda Emet. All right, that's the whole thing. What does it mean? Harote ile not tovot uve naot. So he says when you see a beautiful tree, or good-looking creatures, or even if it's a heathen. I mean, it's what it's saying. I mean, even if he says by casually glancing at him, since glancing at him is forbidden, or an animal, or an animal, you say the bracha of Baruch Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam shechacha lo be'olamot. And so he says, blessed are you, Hashem, the King of the universe, who has such who has such in this world. This bracha is only said when you see them the first time, and it should not be repeated when you see them again or another time, unless the latter is more beautiful than the former. Okay, some hardcore stuff came out. Some hardcore stuff came out. Some thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is this chapter, this study there's a lot to unpack with this.
Yeah.
First thing, just kind of going back to even the beginning, going back to Ashlag. This halakha really helps us to transition from that first stage that you were talking about, as far as like being a baby. Because when you in that process of being a baby, you're always looking to receive. About the age of 13, like you said, there's a spark that kind of, it almost ignites. It's in there, but it's just more revealed. And the way that I see that is that 13-year-old gets to a point where now it doesn't just see its needs, but it can now acknowledge the needs of others around him, and he can see how others need to receive, and then he says, oh, you know what? Hey, I can contribute to this need, which can really change quite a bit of communities. It can really change life altogether when we really embrace that concept. Because when you have the ability to see and to acknowledge others, and now if you got a whole, let's say you got a whole community full of 13-year-olds, I'm just saying 13-year-olds and up, that all have this mindset that they can acknowledge and see outside of themselves and see the needs of others, and have the desire to actually share to help those needs. Now everybody's like helping each other. Everybody's like engaging too with the response of helping each other. And then, so when we go into halakha, what this does is this actually gives us a deeper framework of how to actually practice this and how to develop this stage. Because what it does, like I wrote down a few things that you were talking about. Like for example, just saying a blessing for all of these things in creation, because that's the first thing that he deals with, is just the environment, just the physical environment around you, just observing everything, and there's a blessing for everything. And so because of that, that teaches us to see as God sees, and to respond the way God responds, right? So like it's interesting, because when we were little, I remember we talked about this once before. There was always this mindset and this thing with our grandparents and our elders, that whenever a storm was coming in, and whenever there was lightning and thundering, they would literally, number one, they would tell us, say, hey, get off the telephone. They would turn the televisions off, and they would say, everybody get down. It's time to pray. And they would tell us to be quiet. And they would say, this is the voice of God, right? That's why they would say that. They would say, this is the voice of God, right? So give reverence, and I remember that. And literally no one was allowed to get on the telephone, no one was allowed to turn the television on. And that was just a thing. And to say that, I want to also throw in there that this was not, our families were not like non-denominational or charismatic. Okay, we're talking about Catholic households that were being brought up in Catholicism. Okay, so the next aspect was that really stood out to me, was simply, now that you're looking at people, you're looking now, instead of looking at creation, now you're looking at people in the different aspects of their lives, the different what we would say is like handicaps or disabilities, or just, instead of us looking at these things, say, oh, like what's wrong with them, or what's going on with them. Instead, the initial step is that when I see somebody that's different than myself, or different from what I'm used to seeing, I don't automatically look at it as a disability. I look at that and I bless Hashem for the uniqueness of what I'm seeing. That this is a miracle. This is something different. This is and so in that way, we can acknowledge the beauty of all people and everything. That there's no one that's ugly. There's no one that's bad off. And finally, when you talked about like the place that we say a blessing, and the place that miracles take place. I remember, and I tell my children, my family, this story. We've been, for a long time, and when I was in college, I was getting involved with a lot of things that I shouldn't have got involved with. Okay, and from that time frame, there was a situation that came up where I got into it with the guy, and he buddy of mine we had firearms and he had a firearm, and we were about to get into it, and this guy pulled this firearm, this pistol out, and he had it pointed at me, and in the midst of that, I heard a voice. I heard a voice, and that voice said, "What are you doing here? Like, what are you doing?" And it humbled me. It really made me it just really humbled me. And I looked at the guy, and I just looked at him, and he had this gun, and I just turned around and walked away because
Wow.
I heard that voice. Yeah, I turned around, walked away, and I got in the car, and by the time I got in the car, the guys that was with him, they took off running because my buddy, he had a firearm, and they saw it. And they took off running and whatnot. But we got in the car and we left. And he's like, "Man, what's wrong, man? What's going on?" I said, "Man, let's just go. Let's just go." And that actually changed my life. That moment pivoted my life in the right direction.
Wow.
It really changed my life. And so, just thinking about that, I'm thinking about that house, and I'm thinking about that town where that took place, and and just going there, and Baruch Hashem, because that was a miracle. That was a miracle. And there's other situations too that could be even more miraculous, but that really is a positive thing, and it makes me wonder. Yeah, it makes me wonder how many times we can actually do that, and how many people will benefit from doing that.
Right.
That there is a blessing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, we
I just want to talk about our little lamb.
Oh yeah,
We just had lambs this morning.
Oh wow.
So it's like, just I was actually thinking this morning, I was in the kitchen, I was like, okay, there's got to be a blessing for this and so forth. And so this was right on time
Oh wow.
to think about, all of these different things. Like, it's on a lighter note.
Yeah. And on that point, is just saying that, again, the Torah is our life, right? We have the books, we have the scriptures, but these tools are there to teach us how to see the world, right? Because the Torah study is what keeps us connected to the ultimate purpose, where we're going, and all these types of things. So when we look back at our life, we could see, when we see those miracles, that's a sign of growth, right? It's a sign of connecting the story all together, right? And so the things that we've experienced, and the miracles and that, I mean, we just have to sit back, and it's a great preparation for Pesach, because it's that's the time for that, right? To really look back at those spaces, and at some point, visiting those places, and going, and not only just doing the bracha, but if someone's around that you could give some charity to, it's just like, that type of thing. It's nothing crazy. It's a little something, but it's just the spirit of full circle, right? You were there, you weren't in maybe the best consciousness, and now you come back in this elevated consciousness, right? And you're able to see how God rescued you, and so it's like just acknowledging that, and even it's a great lesson for the kids, you know what I mean, to be able to, experience these things and say, hey, this is what happened, and this, and blah blah blah, and so the kids get to say a blessing too, right? Because it's on their father's miracle, right? So these things are very important, and just intensifying that. And on the Rav Ashlag part, Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying too. It's just, like, you look at like our society, and I'm not criticizing, anybody, but like you look at some of these like NBA shows, like you got like TNT, you got like Shaq and Charles Barkley and all these different guys, and you see the way they interact, and it's kind of like it's funny because it's the same way they acted when they were kids playing basketball. You know what I mean? The same type of joke, the camaraderie, and these different things. And it's okay. I mean, because but it makes you wonder how many people in society have never grown past that 13-year-old state. You know what I'm saying? In their development, right? And as men, we talk about what it is to be a man and these different things. But if we haven't evolved out of that state of the desire to receive for oneself, I would think parenting and being a father would be very intimidating, right? And so it's that idea of being able to look at society and critique it and say, wait, if society doesn't propel us to grow really in so many ways, most of the growth comes through suffering, right? People have bad experiences and they change their life. So when we look back and say, well, if that's really the main mechanism what propels society is suffering, then we could also see that society itself could be very immature, right? And the thing about the 13-year-old isn't really able to grasp the significance of acquiring wealth and long term and influence and cultivation, right? They're just thinking about their immediate needs, right? And you think about the credit system in America, and you think the salary, the paychecks, and all these things. It's like the system reinforces this adolescence, right? Where you depended on your thing, this type of thing. So it's an interesting way to kind of look at society. And I also heard once this one great teacher said a long time ago. He was explaining this idea, right? And he was saying like, what makes a used car salesman great? Right? What makes a great used car salesman? What makes a used car salesman great is that the used carsman never sells. It's not selling the car. He's selling the person's desire to receive. What does that mean? He sees a person. Oh man, you look great in this car. Oh man, all the girls are gonna love you. Wow, you're gonna get respect. You're gonna get respect. You're gonna drive, and all that is the desire to receive. It's the ego. It's the and he's like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Where do I sign? Right. And so this is society, right? Society is built around all these different, like look at when you look at television, look at the commercials, everything's that they're selling the desire to receive. It's not selling the inner aspect of the soul that wants to correct that part. It doesn't even address that. It only addresses the desire to receive all the images, everything, the concept of government. Government is there because it establishes the perception of self-preservation, right? I am preserved because of government. The whole thing is desire to receive. And when we understand that, we could interact and communicate with people more effectively, right? Because this is the desire to see. When Joseph was translating Pharaoh's dreams, what did he tell him? He played on his desire to receive. He said, Pharaoh, they're going to know you're not all powerful. He's like, oh man, we got to do something about this. You in charge. If you figure it out, you in charge. You got it. Nobody can figure that out. My desire to receive can't change. So it's just saying that. So when it's these are not just concepts. These are glasses, right? These are glasses on how to look around and see the world and say, wait, all this is in a frame of desire to receive. None of it's about this frame of sharing. All this, people's mindsets, this race, racism, bigotry, this, all this thing is all based around this sense of preservation. That means I'm safe from this position, which is the desire to receive, right? It expresses itself differently in every community, but the root of it is the same. And so we want to understand that more, and we want to understand how society works, and we want to critically look at it. So we'll continue on Wednesday, same time, probably earlier because we do 17. So we'll go 16 on Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday. So we'll just continue on. But yeah, just that idea of re-critiquing society and being like, wow, like look. Go ahead.
Hey, one other thing I almost forgot. Yesterday we were studying the writings of the Sanhedrin, and we were covering the section about about the world to come, right?
Mm.
And the
What you doing,
exceptions of
Daf
the world to
Yomi?
come in. Huh?
You doing the Daf Yomi?
Is that, it's called what was it called? It was
in the we were in the
No,
what was it,
because they learn a
Safaria?
different page every day. They learn a different page of the Talmud every day. Is that what you're doing?
Oh,
That program?
no, sir.
Oh, okay.
So no, this was no. We were just studying through, because we're doing a lesson, doing a teaching. We're teaching the children about the judges and building more respect and honor for the judges and the sages and their works and their writings. And so
Nice.
we got to that section about the Sanhedrin, and this through the Mishnah. It's the Mishnah through Safaria, and we get to that section, and we get to chapter 10. It's about the world, the rulings about who will have a share in the world to come. And then it says, it makes a statement. It says that all Jewish people have a share in the world to come. And then it says, but these are the exceptions, right? And so it gives you a list of those that will not have a share in the world to come. And one, sometimes they're debated a little bit, but there's one group that is actually mentioned that you just spoke about, that there's actually a blessing that we give that counteract what Satan ruled would not have a share in the world to come. And one of those groups was those that they treat or they speak about the Torah scholars and the Torah that they teach in contempt, and said those people will not have share in the world to come. So if you speak lightly, or you speak ill of, or you speak in contempt of Torah scholars and the Torah that they teach, that you will not. And this is a ruling by the Sanhedrin. It's a ruling by that then. Rabbi Akiva was a part of that group that says, listen, if you do that, then you are not going to have a share in the world to come. And here in the Shulchan Aruch in Halakha, it says that when you see a Torah scholar, you're supposed to speak a blessing. There's a
Nice.
blessing that you're supposed to speak, you see. And so that really helps to protect and to guard us from having an ill mindset about Torah scholars. It's very powerful.
Yeah, no. I like that. I like that. So you guys were reading Ethics of the Fathers.
No. It's actually that's actually a part of the Mishnah, the Sanhedrin portion.
Hmm.
If
Nice.
you go, you come to Safari, you look, you just type in Mishnah. It has all of the tractates and the orders.
Yeah.
There's one that's one section called the Sanhedrin, and it has monetary, laws and so forth. But then that one section is dealing with those that have the world to come, and it's very interesting.
No, that's very good. That's very good. So I was going to say, just as one other point on the Rav Ashlag, when we're analyzing the Torah and we hear the Torah talk about like good guys and bad guys, what they're talking about is the energy of the desire to receive and the energy of the desire to share, and that's was conflicting. Anytime you see conflict in the Torah, it's those two energy influences that the Torah is seeing how it plays out in a various scenario. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, anyways. All right, so we'll continue on Wednesday. Great session. Baruch atah Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen. Any questions, anything, just hit me up.